Our garden is a celebration of 90 years of the Guide Dogs for the Blind Association and 90 years since the first British guide dog partnerships. Back in 1931, these partnerships were formed between German shepherd dogs and veterans who had lost their sight following injuries sustained in World War I and gas attacks. Now, these partnerships offered a real lifeline to these veterans and helped them fulfil a better, more independent life.
There's actually a nod to the origin of the charity back in the 1930s in the garden, and two main features in the garden are two metal sculptures. One is of a veteran, very sad, very downtrodden, very isolated. Then the second one is a sculpture of a veteran that has now been liberated by their guide dog. They're out on the precipice of a hill, they're looking out into the light, they're looking forward, they're striding out back into society, being supported by their dog. And other elements in the garden are there to look after the senses of people, whether they're completely blind or partially lacking sight. Sounds, for example, from a babbling brook and the rustling of grasses. There's fragrance from different flowers and different plants as well. And we've planted bold blocks of colour so people with partial sight loss can still pick up on these colour blocks, even though perhaps they can't get the individual definition of the flowers or the colours. So everything about this garden is to show the journey that people take once they've taken possession, if you like, of their guide dog, and their guide dog liberating them, taking them to a life of independence, taking them to a life where they can join the rest of society and live a life of independence, a life of joy, a life of pleasure again, and a life of just feeling involved with society and everybody else.
And as with all our Chelsea gardens, we want this one to be not only nostalgic, but also to have a real emotional feel about it, to give you an idea of how vitally important these partnerships are. With Chelsea being postponed until September, we've had to make changes to our plant list and update it just like everybody else has. Originally we were going to use 100% native British wildflowers, trees and shrubs in the garden to help illustrate our story. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use 100% wildflowers because we can't get them all looking fabulous in September, so we've had to change the list slightly and use a few cultivated plants.
Even one of the best wildflower growing companies in the country has not been able to find, as John said, the full range of plants we need. So yeah, we've kind of actually decided to augment some of the garden with some more cultivated perennials, such as Japanese anemones, for example. Now, normally, looking at these Japanese anemones in front of us, we'd be sort of pretty panic stricken if we were going to be using these in Chelsea in May, because these are just not looking, fit for purpose at all. But by September, they will look absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. The irony is, normally our gorgeous, gorgeous dandelions here that would be perfect for May and looking brilliant at the moment, the irony of that is they're probably not going to make it for September because they're going to be way over by then. So yeah, we've had to kind of bring in some changes. But what we've done, we've tried to choose perennial species, cultivated perennial species that were around at that time or even before the start of when the garden is based in the 1930s. So we've still got that kind of genuine look to the garden with the species that would have been around at that point.
Because things like this, as you say, the Japanese anemone Honorine Gibert, that has origins back in the 1850s, so it still gives that nostalgic feel to the garden.
We love designing natural gardens, and over the years at the Chelsea Flower Show we've used loads and loads of wildflowers, indigenous wildflowers from the UK, climbers, trees and shrubs. Some of them are actually quite rare, so it's fantastic to grow them in your garden, give them a bit more of a chance, just increase the amount of plants there are. We've actually got a little fantastic clump of primroses down here covered in dozens and dozens of bright yellow flowers. So give wildflowers a go in your garden. They're really worthwhile and they're so rewarding.
Now, we had hoped to meet some of the current guide dogs in training, especially Flash, named after Flash, one of the first guide dogs, and also to meet some of the guide dog owners themselves. But with lockdown restrictions, we've been unable to do that. So instead, we're going to show you some wonderful puppy cam footage. Enjoy and see you in September.